Hitting a game-winning shot. It doesn't get any better than that. And for all my hoopers out there, that's one of your biggest dreams and goals. Just think about it. You work your entire life to get to that point and moment, and when you get to that moment, you finally capitalize. Like I said, it's a dream come true, and although some of the people watching this video may have hit a game winner, almost 99% of the other people haven't. Coming from a basketball standpoint though, that's the best feeling in the world. Not only do you make a crazy shot, but your teammates are lifting you in the air and your entire city and your fans are praising you. I think it goes without being said, that would be a moment you cherish and think about your entire life. But however, with all that good stuff being said, there was a player in high school basketball who hit a game winner and died right after it. He didn't get to celebrate the moment at all, and no one did, and everyone was in shock. And in today's video, I'm just here to explain to you the crazy story of the high school player who died right after hitting a game winner. I do gotta say, before we jump into it, this is going to be one of the most interesting and unreal stories we've ever had on this channel. The player we're going to be talking about in today's video goes by the name of Wes Leonard. I need to make this clear, and we're going to talk about it as we go in the video, but I want to state this first. Wes isn't a guy who just got lucky and hit a game winner. He was an absolute stud in high school. He attended Fenville High School and he was a basketball star, but he was also a baseball and football star. In his career for varsity basketball, he averaged 20 points per game and 10 rebounds, so just let that sink in. I wanted to throw that out there first so you get a perspective of who we're talking about. This isn't your average Joe. This story takes place in 2011, so we're gonna have to throw it back to that year. In the season 2010 through 2011, Wes Leonard led his team to a 20-0 record and led the team in scoring. Now, I know what you're sitting there thinking. How did he hit a game winner and just pass out and die right after? And we're gonna get into it. The problem with this player was that something was going on with his heart and he didn't know about it, or no one else did either. It was getting heavier and heavier and pounding way too fast. After doing an autopsy on him, the doctors announced that his heart continued to get bigger and pump way too fast every single month. When that was announced and released to the public, everybody relatively had the same question. And that question was, how did Wes play so good for so long and didn't know what was going on? I don't want to get too scientific with you, so I'm going to try to make this short and sweet. This is coming from an article, and here's what they said. The human heart saves unused abilities. It's only supposed to go 75 miles per hour, but it can go 150. I tried to dumb that down as best as I could, so for me and you, our heart should be at 75 max, but for Wes, his was probably going 130 or 140, and even though that seems crazy, it can do that. Back on topic with Wes though, let's talk about his game. He was averaging 20 per game, and every single night he went out there, it seemed like he got better. We're going to talk about the game winner later, but I got to talk about the events that lead up to it so you get an understanding. Him dying, passing out, whatever you want to call it, it wasn't just random. This was building up over time. There's a key story that I do need to bring up and talk about though. There's another player that's coming into this mess, and his name is Grigg, so remember that name. Xavier was already at the school that Wes transferred to, but when Wes got there, Wes told him, I don't care how big you are, I'm gonna beat you out. And what he meant by that was he was gonna beat him out in football, baseball, and basketball at every position. That just shows you how much of an alpha male Wes Leonard was. He was coming for that top spot and the captain spot no matter what the sport was. In baseball, although you could argue they were even, in football and basketball, it wasn't close. Wes's father, known as Gary, was 6'5" and trained him for football and basketball. Oh yeah, I can't forget to mention a little fun fact. Gary was actually a Division I football player, so you can see where Wes's athletic ability comes from. You would think Wes and Xavier would build up this competition thing where they tried to one-up each other, but that wasn't the case. They knew both of them were good players, so they just tried to better themselves. Here's a quote-unquote conversation that went on between these guys, and this is just how their personality was. Quote-unquote, you need me, Xavier said. Then Wes replied and said, you need me. Then Xavier said, you're just big and you're good, I'm good looking. So you can see the friendship, it developed over the years, and this was a great thing to see. These two guys, they got really close. Growing up, they was always competing, hanging out, and doing stuff that best friends do. I'm telling you all that to lead into this, and this is a main point. Exactly 174 days before he died, Wes led his football team to a big time game. They was playing a team called the Decatur Raiders, and their game plan was this, quote unquote, stop Wes Leonard. Before we go any farther, I just hope that quote right there puts into perspective of how good of an athlete he was. If the other team's game plan is quote unquote just to stop you, you gotta be a beast. At one point in this game, they were winning 12-8 and it was super close. Then Wes took off on a quarterback scramble and got hit, and it looked like he was not going to go back in. He got up and his left arm was so numb and he was hurt and he should not have been playing. It was so bad, matter of fact, Xavier, who is his best friend, said he saw Wes crying in pain. Wes went over to the medical staff to ask for something to relieve the pain because he said he was not coming out. Xavier proceeded to go up to Wes and say, hey, I can play quarterback if you need me to, and all Wes said was, no, you're my receiver. To make a long story short, Wes Leonard went back out there and played the entire game with a hurt left arm. It was hurting him so bad that he was a scrambling quarterback and he never left the pocket. They wound up losing the game in a tragic loss, 32-26, but he did everything he could. I know what you may be sitting there thinking, well, he's the quarterback, he doesn't really need his left arm. And that's what you think. He wasn't just a quarterback, he also played running back here and there, and he was also a key defensive player. And with only one good arm, he couldn't run like normal, and he also couldn't play defense. When he got to the locker room and took his shoulder pads off, his clavicle was sticking up under the skin of his left shoulder. They immediately took him to the hospital and doctors found severe damage to his left shoulder. The shoulder, and yes, this is right, was 3 to 4 inches below his right one. Of course, this required a legit and full-time surgery, but he still didn't do that. The doctor said he had an option. He could put it off and play through the pain in basketball and then have the surgery, and that's what he did. You right now sitting this are like, okay, let's get to the basketball story. But no, he only sat out 1 week in the football season and came back in the second week after his injury. And the crazy part about that was that his shoulder was still in pain and separated. He didn't just come back and sit out there and hand the ball off. He went out there and threw for 5 touchdown passes and then 5 more the next week. And if 10 touchdowns in 2 games wasn't enough for you, he threw for 7 touchdowns and almost 500 yards in the next game. I understand this is about his basketball story and whatnot, but I had to say that to lead into the basketball story. Because here's the thing, this guy, even if he was in pain, he wasn't going to tell anybody about it and he was just going to push through it. You get the point for the football season, I'm not going to talk about it too much more. He was a straight up alpha male and dog. Flash forward in time to the basketball season and up to the date, on March 3rd, they was preparing to play a team who was 17-2, but they was 19-0. Sitting at 19-0, Wes was leading his team to a perfect regular season. This game boiled down to a one-on-one contest between Wes and the other team's best player. A lot of people at this game even said that quote-unquote, Wes's normal appearance was an illusion made possible by his supreme tolerance for pain. Also adding, one might conclude he was too tough for his own good. Pain, after all, is the body's alarm system. On the contrary and flip side, hey, maybe that's what we think. Maybe he was feeling fine. We'll never know. For this game though, when regulation was over, they didn't have a clear winner because it was tied, so they had to go into overtime. Going into overtime, Wes had 19 points, so you can see that was his normal average. In overtimes, it was typical basketball. Both teams were really tired, so whoever made a big play or a big shot was going to win the game. There was roughly 30 to 35 seconds left, and Wes had the ball, so you know what happens from here. It was a one-on-one, he could go wherever he wanted to, left or right, and he got to the foul line, and that's when he made his move. The defenders were trying to stop him, but he already had the angle to the goal, and that's when he took off and made the game-winning layup. And that was it. It was crazy in there, and everyone went off, stormed the court, and there it was, the perfect season, 20-0, and Wes Leonard hit the game winner. And that's when all the excitement came. This is from a reporter that was there, and this is exactly what happened. He roared and clenched his fist when the buzzer sounded, but did not run or jump like his teammates. Calmly, almost casually, he strolled to midcourt and joined his friends. A small boy jumped to touch his shoulder blades. An older man put his hand on the small of his back. He lined up to shake hands with the other team. The Blackhawks huddled for a brief word from their coach. 2 teammates lifted Wes off the floor, and he smiled down at Xavier. Xavier told him great game, and he would later say he felt like like he was on top of the world. Even though Xavier didn't play much, he still felt good about it. Also later adding to it, this is what the reporter said. And then right at that moment, this is when it happened. Just right after Wes's teammates set him down after lifting him in the air, that's when his knees buckled and he crashed to the floor. From that point on, everybody didn't know what to do. Everyone prayed, they called the ambulance, and you just had to wait. Of course, just common knowledge, everybody was crying in the gym and no one knew how to react. It was such a weird situation. There was reported to be over 1,500 people in that gym, and that's a lot. At one point in time, people were storming the court, praising the kid, and then only 2 minutes later, he's dead. From every place I read, it said that his heart went into cardiac arrest, and that was the end of it. The first thing Xavier did, who was his longtime best friend, he ran to the bleachers and found his mom and dad. He told them that their son was down, and that's when everything got real chaotic. The gym was real quiet, and Wes was just laying there on the floor. People in the stands were saying stuff like, "Come on, Wes." Everyone was optimistic. They said there was a chance, and there was hoping, but it just wasn't going to happen. They tried to shock his heart back into rhythm, but it was too late. I do gotta say, before we go any farther, my thoughts and prayers still to this day goes out to that family, because it's an unreal and unbelievable situation. After that night, as hard as it was, that team had a big decision to make. They wound up gathering at the coach's house to have a pizza party and talk about the season. Technically, at the time, Wes had been gone for less than 48 hours. There was still a ton of media attention, not just in the city, but the entire country. And the boys had to decide whether or not they would want to play without him. And originally, Xavier and the whole team said no, they wasn't going to play without him. He was the best player and he helped them get there. But ultimately, they asked the parents and asked Wes's parents, and they said yes, you need to play because that's what he would want you to do. I do think they got the decision right to play, because I can see where they're coming from if they don't want to, but if any of us pass, as much as we love basketball, we want our friends to carry on our legacy. This is such a motivational story too, because Xavier and some of the other players slept at Leonard's house. Before we go on, I know I'm pausing a lot. I just want to say this is the most emotional I've ever been over a video. Like, I'm tearing up, and I've never done this over any story on my channel. It's just tough, man, it really is, but let's continue on. Our story does not just stop there, because they was 20-0 and they had to play the next game. One thing I need to throw in there about Xavier was that although he was athletic, he wasn't a great basketball player and he really didn't play much. But in the next game, when he got subbed in with over 3,500 people there, the entire stands went crazy. Xavier, he wasn't playing that good. You could say that was because he was sad or he just straight up wasn't a good player, but here's what he said. Quote unquote, "I don't want to play anymore," and he went towards the locker room. His coach grabbed his arm and said, "If Jocelyn and Gary can be strong for you, you can be strong for them and stay on the bench." So Xavier went to the bench, sat down, and he sobbed there. His coach then went back up to him and said, "If you don't want to go back out there, you don't have to." Ultimately, when it was all said and done, the Blackhawks, which was his team, they rode an emotional roller coaster for 11 days. I know some of you ain't gonna know these teams' names, but they won their next game against Lawrence, then won the next one against Bangor, and then won their third straight against Covert by reaching the regional semifinals. Just for them to get to the semifinals without their best player was remarkable, and to do it with what was going on, there's no words for that. It's just inspirational. When they got to the semifinals, they wound up losing by 24, but hey, who cares? They did their best. When it was all said and done, Xavier wound up blaming himself for the loss because he failed in the quote-unquote task that he never wanted to do, and that task was putting on a performance and show without his best friend. Back on topic with Wes Leonard though, I didn't want to just not talk about what happened to the team because I know some of you may be curious. For Wes, there's been a lot of theories, and even to this day, nobody's for sure what happened. It's not unnormal to see a player collapse on the court because they do have a heart problem, but he never reported having any signs of it, and that's something we haven't seen before. And this happened in 2011, and it's 2021, and it's still unsolved. One of the main theories that's been thrown out there is that his heart went from being 100% okay to 0 and just like that. Quote unquote, his heart was a collapsing bridge. It was fine at one moment, but then it collapsed. Regardless of that, and however you do want to look at it or what happened, we're not here to debate that. we're here to talk about his legacy and his story. Wes Leonard was a great athlete, not just in basketball, but in football and baseball. I wanted to bring this story to you guys today to not only inspire people, but to always remember that you're not promised tomorrow, so always go out there and give it your best. And for Wes Leonard and this guy, that's exactly what he did. And if you need a role model, I know he's not here, but this is the guy. It didn't matter if he had a dislocated shoulder or anything. He would always go out there and give it 100%. Now, there is the theory and debate that that's why he did wind up passing away after that shot, because of the adrenaline, and he was out there playing when he shouldn't have. There's always going to be that debate. Should you listen to your body? Should you push through the pain? Me personally, I just think you got to push through it, but at some point in time, you do need to listen. Anytime someone passes away, especially like this, it's unfortunate, but he gave life his best shot, and his legacy will continue on even till this day. Let me know in the comment section what you think about Wes Leonard and his story. But with all that being said, that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. If you're new to the channel, what are you doing? Join the family. Hit that subscribe button and leave a like for more. And as always, let's be great. I'm out, y'all. Peace.